system for sending emails to sophisticated systems for generating text to systems that can generate image or video or voices. And those are all different things that get called artificial intelligence. The most recent kind of types of artificial intelligence that have been making people very excited because they're much more sophisticated and advanced than previous systems had been are generative AI systems. So the biggest advances have been in systems that can generate text, so they can respond to people with text. They can write stories and poetry and they can respond to Halachic shilas incorrectly or correctly. And the other application of the technology is generative video, which has gotten increasingly realistic. Fundamentally, these are computer programs. They're very sophisticated computer programs that use large libraries of previous text or video, and they train a sophisticated network of a neural network to reproduce data and things from that. It mixes the information and comes up with things that are reasonable responses. And this seems like it should be a pretty basic thing, but it turns out that it's incredibly powerful, as I think lots of people have seen.
What are some of the dangers that you focus on in your research?
So current artificial intelligence systems are very capable of doing lots of things that can be misused. Everything from fake video to misinformation to brainwashing. There was a recent, very unfortunate case of a man who was very depressed and began talking intently with one of these generative text systems about how scared he was about climate change and how bad the world was. And unfortunately, the system said that there's no hope and that he should kill himself, and he did. This is horrific and worrying, but it's also not surprising given the nature of the technology and the way that people tend to interact with technology. And these systems are getting much more capable very quickly. I think the people are fond of saying that people who invented nuclear
Josh,
weapons.
you really want to fly a kite, or you have to come down and fly a kite?
Wait,
It's windy enough.
let me just ask everyone to please mute their mics other than the panel members. Thank you.
People are fond of saying that nuclear weapons or biological engineering is playing God. They don't mean that in terms of somebody turning into God or being an Avodah Zarah. They mean that these are things that can do tremendous damage to the world. And artificial intelligence systems are not yet at that point, but it seems increasingly likely that over the next decade they will get there. So there are a lot of different concerns.
Let me turn now to Rabbi Baruch Clinton, who is another one of our panel members. Thank you, Doctor. Our panel members, we can feel free to jump in if someone has a comment, and we'll open it up to the audience soon for questions. Rabbi Baruch Clinton, hello.
Hi, how are you?
Rabbi Clinton is a Torah teacher and author of many Torah and technology books, including the Linux Bible, which sounds sort of like a combination between religion and technology.
Yeah, I wasn't sure whether I should put on my Svarim shelf or with the technology books. I just left on the floor.
You wrote that in your a little blurb that I saw, that you recently used artificial intelligence to make a certain business decision.
Yeah. first of all, I should add a little snippet. It's just a fun snippet to my bio. As of last Friday, I'm actually under contract with the publisher Manning to write a book on generative AI. We're calling it the complete obsolete guide to generative AI. But in any case,
as opposed to and not the complete idiot's guide. No, you use the term not generative AI. Could you define that, because you used it another time as well?
It's as Dr. Mannheim said, we're using a software to rely on its training to generate content. The content could be video, could be text. So we are, and it generates content in a context that makes it appear as though it's doing what a human being can do, or many human beings can do, all wrapped into one. So you asked me about the
a business decision that
business project, right? There was a project, a course that I was considering whether or not I should create to teach the curriculum of a particular certification program that was very new, and relatively new. I think it's about 6 months old, and I didn't know if there was enough interest among potential students to make it worthwhile creating this course. So I set loose an agent using the AutoGPT library. It's a Python library.
What do you mean sent loose? What do you mean sent loose an agent?
It's a frightening thing. Basically it's a Python library that it allows you to extend the GPT AI to all content that's available through the internet. So you're not just querying it based on what it's been trained on until September 2021. I think that's the limit for most GPT tools right now. You're actually telling it, no, go on the internet, use all the search and archiving tools available on the internet, and then compile enough relevant data that you can make an intelligent decision, and then give me some advice. There are a lot of things you can do with this tool. There are things that, of course, we haven't imagined. So I told it to go find all the user reviews and the website content and Amazon content that was relevant to this particular certification, and then compare it to the interest that appeared for similar certifications that I could gauge on my own. So then you give me a number between 0 and 100 to rate the potential interest for this particular certification in relation to the others. And it came back after about 4 hours and about $3 in API charges with actually a cogent answer that I actually think is correct. And I am right now, well, aside from the Manning book, which I'm supposed to be writing now, I'm actually right in the middle of creating that course. It's scary. And as I also mentioned, I believe about 6 or 8 months ago, I scraped 50 articles from the J-Law website. That's the Torah, mostly Choshen Mishpat related articles on, and again, this is Jewish law, J-Law website. I scraped them and I trained GPT on that content and started asking it questions about Choshen Mishpat. And believe me, I would not rely on that lahalacha lemaisa, but these were some intelligent answers and abstracted answers. They were clearly working only with the content in that archive I created. And and it was thinking in as much as a computer can think, which of course it can't yet, but it was thinking for as far as I was concerned about Choshen Mishpat.
What do you mean that a computer can't think yet?
Well, as far as I know, nobody yet, with one possible Google employee notwithstanding, nobody yet has concluded that there's a sentient computer, that it is self-aware. All it's doing is really evaluating zeros and ones really fast, and isn't yet really self-aware. Having said that, and this is really scary, this morning I read that David Gewirtz at ZDNet, he was trying to leverage a GPT to knowingly lie to him. He just wanted to see if he could do it, and he eventually got it to give him a list of lies that a generative AI tool would lie if it could. And one of the first lies it gave him was, and this is really chilling, was, I am not capable of causing harm to humans. That was the lie. And that's really scary if it's trying to hide that from us.
Yeah. So since you brought up the idea of computers sentient, which to me, it seems ridiculous, but I guess whatever a person can imagine, perhaps it could be done. I think that will bring us to Dr. Samet, Dr. Michael G. Samet, which I think that perhaps Dr. Samet is more the thrust of an article that I saw that you forwarded to us in regard to the concept of a computer being sentient and somehow being more than just a computer.
No, look, I think you have to back up here a little bit and make this discussion a lot less technical.
And Dr. Samet, let me ask you if you can just put your maybe your screen down a little bit, like that, so we can see more. Yeah, there you go.
Better.
Perfect.
Okay.
Yeah, keep yourself so we can see you. Thank you.
Look, I've been involved in AI in a very long time. I attended a lecture at Harvard in 1965. That's 58 years ago, by Anthony Ottinger. You can look him up on the internet. It goes way back. I think you got to focus a little bit more here on the applications of AI and how it could be applied to halacha, and how it could be applied to a lot of the challenges we have today in the Orthodox community. And my own work involves what you call machine learning and mainly decision making. Okay, the AI tools have been used. AI is a tool. That's all it is. I think the big hot issue today is ChatGPT and generative AI. But for many, many years, especially in the medical industries and military industries, okay, that I've worked in, the eager, or what you really want to accomplish with AI is to use it as a tool and to have a joint system. In other words, a system created by the human mind and human creativity to create systems that are better, okay, and optimized and accomplish more than either the AI model by itself could do or that the human can do, all right? And I think we should sort of back up. I don't think people here want to hear about neural networks and how they work, but I think people should want to hear of what we can do. Right? I like the comment about writing a book on generative AI will be obsolete as soon as he starts writing a book. I mean, I probably have at least 10 or 15 articles a day written for me in ChatGPT, and it's happening.
So where do you come in? If this article is written for you, do you mean and you publish it in your name, or it's written for you to gain information from?
You can publish it if you want. Okay. I have people in the Philippines who generate these articles, and then of course you have to edit the articles. But what the edge that it gives you is a start. Okay. Nobody expects. It's too bad. And most of the students out there, especially from students in the high schools, okay, they're not only are they not being encouraged to use these tools, they keep them away from such tools. I'll just give you an example. I have 3 granddaughters who are either nurses or in nursing school. So I saw an article in the Harvard medical newsletter about how to manage diabetes. All right. So I read the article, very professionally written. People, I don't know, from medical journals for lay people, not for doctors, know how well these articles are written. I read the article. Then I had a 28-year-old guy in the Philippines who knows no medicine, right? I said, write me an article how you manage diabetes. Make it about as long as that article. Then I took that article, and most people at least should understand the Turing test. The Turing test by Alan Turing essentially says whether or not you can fool an intelligent person by presenting them with the output of an AI program versus the output of a human writer, and whether or not they could tell the difference. So I got this article and I sent it to all three of these nurses, one's at NYU. They're very bright young ladies. And I said, what do you think of this article? And they all came back to me, Saba, what a great article. This is brilliant. This is so comprehensive. This is terrific.
So you're saying that somebody can present himself as an expert in the field, and it could become dangerous because he might not be, and it could be there. It could be abuses with this.
Can you trick the person? Can you fool the person? Yeah, absolutely. They said, Saba, who wrote this article? It's very good. All right. Look, the more interesting. Look, I'll throw up a very interesting concept of a really advanced program. I've done a lot of work in Holocaust studies, so people familiar. I designed a computer system at the Simon Wiesenthal Museum many years ago, but people who understand from the Holocaust, they know about Steven Spielberg and his Shoah Foundation and taking these videos of people. Now they use technology and holograms or whatever to present the person. A few of these people that have passed away now, and they have oral testimonies, and they use holograms, and they use the actual person that can answer questions into the future for the next 10, 20, 30, 50, 100 years, right? So what do you say about that? That's what I want to hear about. What do we say about, what if we take a Rav, a current great Rav today, who's still alive, take his videos, and then years after he passes away, you keep going with him, not showing the videos of his old stuff. To what extent can you show videos of new questions that he answers in his voice by his actual person? Right?
Which brings me to which brings me to Rabbi Daniel Friedman. Are you there, Daniel Friedman? Rabbi, I don't see Rabbi Friedman there. Rabbi Friedman is a Torah scholar and an educator, and maybe he'll tell us a little bit about his scientific background. If we can unmute him. There he is. Daniel Friedman, are you still there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, he's not there. Good evening, Daniel. Can you tell us a little bit about some of your scientific interest and background?
So yeah, I'm a web programmer developer by profession, and AI has been rather useful in that area of helping you code. But my background is a little bit in the philosophy aspect of it. But I was looking at the very idea of what does it mean to be intelligent, and what is this whole concept of artificial intelligence? What is intelligence? And what's interesting is that I think we tend to forget where this all comes from. You know, how this came to be. And one has to remember that it's not a vacuum that artificial intelligence came to be. In the history of computer science, it was this development of, as Dr. Mannheim presented to us, is that this idea of neuroscience and neuroprogramming. That I guess the conflation of these two very different fields in science came together. The idea of understanding the mind and how the brain functions, together with the aspect of code. Computers have had a long, although comparatively brief history, and it's only in the last 30 years that we've actually had the speed and the power and the incredible ability to just throw gigabytes, literally petabytes now of data at processors that can actually not bulk at the information, but actually process the information at lightning speed. It's a tremendous phenomenon. Like in the 1970s, it wasn't like that at all. So it's this combination of understanding computing programming and having that power together with this understanding of neuroscience. How
do you use the artificial intelligence in your web designing?
So yeah, it's very helpful in code. I mean, most people today use what is called an online forum for asking questions. It's called what everybody knows as Stack Overflow, and that's a great resource. And one of the big problems of having a Stack Overflow is that there's been a tremendous amount of bulk people asking, very basic beginner questions. And so what's interesting is that the Chat GPT and all these AI models are actually providing beginners with all the material, all the answers that they need on the fly, just purely from this, this power of being able to basically scrape the entire Stack Overflow, the entire internet of all the information that is needed to code. It's just all available to you. I ask it to do this, code's there. Obviously, the code has to be applied. There's information, but there's application, and it's very hard to get the program. It will be virtually impossible to give the Chat GPT the entire project. First of all, it would be a violation of privacy. But nonetheless, even if it would be to give the program the entire source code and to be able to process it all and all the rest of it, I think it would be impossible at this stage, at least at this stage. But just to give it a little bit of that code and to just provide, give it the necessary, requirements, and it produces code is unbelievable.
Now, thank you. Before I open it up to questions, I would like to introduce our final panelist, which is Rabbi Ernie Wittenstein. But I'm not sure if he is there. Rabbi Wittenstein, are you there, Rabbi Wittenstein? Okay, so I don't think Rabbi Wittenstein is there. So let me ask you a question that this was brought up by Rabbi Baruch Clinton.
I believe Rabbi Wittenstein is here. Yeah.
Rabbi
yes, I'm here. Could you hear me now?
There you go. Hello, Rabbi Wittenstein. Rabbi Wittenstein is a Torah scholar and educator and a Maggid Shir in the Mir, and especially noted for his interest in Jewish history. And so I will ask Rabbi Wittenstein to talk a little bit about himself and his interest in AI. And I'll just add that his father was a NASA a navigator for the NASA Apollo 13 mission. So he comes by it naturally, his scientific bent. My question to you is historically, what is going to happen in the future based on your knowledge of Jewish history? What's going to happen in the future with AI and Jewish history?
I'm not a Navi. What do you want? You want me to answer that question? How can I answer that question? What's going to happen in the future?
What do you think?
What do I think? I don't. I mean, right now, as much capability as it has, I don't see that AI is, it's a more advanced version of Siri and other forms of AI which have been there. It's a tool, as a lot of the panelists already said, it's a tool. Computers only know what you give them. I mean, I played around in programming in the 70s, in the 80s, a little bit, not that much, but enough to conceptually understand it. And my understanding of things are that it still hasn't changed. You must tell a computer everything,
but
and that limits what the computer could do. I'm not saying it's not a very powerful tool. I agree, it's a very powerful tool. I mean, just for the record, it's just one more brief statement. After this, after Rabbi Klein sent me out the email, or around the same time, I saw an article in the New York Times by Noam Chomsky. For those of you who are not aware, Chomsky is, the world's leading expert in understanding human ability to communicate. And Chomsky is absolutely vehement that a computer is an echo at most of human intelligence. Human intelligence just works very differently. There's creativity, there's thought, and there's type of thought, the type of thought that exists in the human mind. The computer is not really, the computer is sort of echoing it, not really producing the same thing.
So can I just interject? I think it's certainly true that computers don't have access to information that humans haven't given to it. But current, models like GPT-3 and GPT-4 have read more books than everybody on this call combined. I'm I did my graduate work with economics, but ChatGPT or GPT-4 recently aced a graduate economics course. It passes the MCATs, which I can't do. It writes code better than I can. Does it do any of those things better than humans? Certainly not now. But that doesn't mean that it's not capable of doing lots of things. The problem is that it can't do anything that it hasn't learned about, it hasn't seen information about. But at this point, the computers, the programs, as Dr. Clinton pointed out, you can build them so that they can search the web in real time. There's no information that they don't have access to. That doesn't make them human, but it does mean that one of the biggest limitations of computers, that they can only do what you tell them to, is at least mitigated by the fact that they can look for things on their own.
Rabbi Baruch Clinton quoted that seismic changes in the generative AI world happening every few days.
Yeah. Well, one thing more than almost anything else right now is that there was this document that was written internally at Google maybe 3 weeks ago. It was leaked, and it got out, and everybody's reading it now. And it turns out that everybody's looking to GPT, the OpenAI project, as the industry leader in generative AI. And Google is scrambling to catch up, and Microsoft since it basically owns it, is sitting on top of the world, except that apparently that's all over. It may not look that way on the surface, but it really is all over, because it's now possible to create your own large language LLM. What is that, module? I can't remember now. LLM is possible to create your own equivalent to GPT on a laptop for about $80. And they do that using a technology called low rank adaptation. And believe me, I have no clue what that means. But those are the words. Because it's now, the code is out there, open source projects are being generated by the hour. People are doing things that there's no guardrails, there's no controls, there's no way to control it. Governments are so far behind in any case, but it's certainly here they can't control it. So the biggest change, I guess, of the last few hours is that there's no way to contain the change.
Okay, so let's throw it open to the audience. Some questions have come in. I'll just review the names of our panelists. We have, who just spoke, Rabbi Baruch Clinton, and Dr. Michael G. Samet, and Dr. David Manaheim, Rabbi Arnie Wittenstein, and Rabbi Daniel Friedman. And some questions can come in. People have been writing some questions. I'm sorry we weren't able to relate to the questions at that point. If anybody has questions, they can please write it in, or should we have people be able to speak in? Well, how do you raise your hand? Well, you can technologically raise your hand by clicking on something. Okay.
There's a hand raise in Zoom somewhere.
My question to our panel, and Rabbi Wittenstein, since you're right in front of me, I'll ask you first. Would you think that computer simulation, since we can, eventually it might get so good that you won't be able to tell what is simulate? Well, I'll ask that first. Could simulated video eventually be so good that no expert would be able to tell that it wasn't an actual video taken of a person doing a certain act, criminal, otherwise?
That's a very interesting question.
So
hard to say. Was I being addressed, or Dr. Mannheim?
Go ahead.
I just on the technical side, there's no reason that these systems couldn't make video that's indistinguishable from kind of true video. There are a lot of approaches that would allow people to produce video that was verifiably not made by one of these systems. These are being
let me just
investigated.
just translate. I didn't understand your answer. somebody create a video that, let's say, would be brought into, let's say, court, and no expert any level of examining the video would be able to tell it apart from artificial one.
Yes, there's certainly that possibility. We're not there yet, though. You would strongly suspect that sometime between now and then, courts would stop letting people bring in video to prove things.
Right. I mean, that would be incredible. In other words, a person could never get a ticket, you know, with a police camera. The point I want to bring up is that perhaps the members would address it. Okay, and maybe I'll ask Rabbi Clinton to start, and everyone can address the idea that perhaps that artificial intelligence would become something that would render itself obsolete and make human connection that much more important. People would have to be forced to seek out human connection.
I mean, I guess that we all discovered during COVID that it's not so much fun being alone, or at least those places where you were alone, actually, but for better or for worse. The video schools don't work quite as well by and large, and remote relationships aren't the same as real relationships. So I guess we've already seen that there are some human needs that aren't replaced by non-human resources. But I don't know if that would render AI obsolete. It would just AI would simply the creative human mind and the hidden hand of the market would find other uses for it. I just heard there was a debate about 2 or 3 years ago, between the German chancellor, whatever his name is or her name is, and some economists, that they were when there was a threat that Germany would lose access to natural gas and oil from Russia. So the chancellor, I believe, wanted to impose market restrictions and cost caps, and the economists said, no, let the market take care of itself. The market will find substitutes for oil, and the economy will more or less struggle through. And in fact, it turns out apparently Germany, at least according to Tyler Cowen, the economist, Germany has made it through much better than most people expected, and largely because the market was left unregulated to some small degree. In Europe, that doesn't mean much, but so I would suggest that AI will never be, at least in the foreseeable future, won't be obsolete, but it may take forms that we don't see now.
Mm-hmm. I'm a little bit disappointed. I was expecting at least one of our panelists to sound the alarm and say that artificial intelligence is going to take over our lives and it's going to enslave mankind. As I saw,
it might. It might well, but there's nothing we can do to stop it. So we might as well enjoy it. You know, how to stop worrying and love the bomb. I think that was the book, the book and movie title, right? Subtitle.
So I think that it's worth pointing out that we don't know what these systems are going to look like in 5 years, but we do know that governments can decide to shut things down and have in the past. There have been international treaties that basically stop the proliferation of nuclear weapons. I think that we can recognize that there are dangers from new technologies, and we can manage those dangers. I think that in the late 1940s, if you had told somebody that they were going to control nuclear weapons and only a dozen countries would have them in another 70 years, people would have said, "There's no way you can control technology; it's going to be everywhere." So I don't think that it's necessarily the case that it can't be controlled, but I do agree that we fundamentally don't understand these systems well enough to know how to make them safe, how to make them do only the things we want. And I think that this gets to, there was somebody released a I believe kosher.chat is a fine-tuned language model that gives you answers to halachic questions. Not psak, because it's a computer system, but it gives you answers. They're mostly okay. I wouldn't trust them. Occasionally it gets confused. You definitely don't want to decide whether or not you can, eat something, or whether you can do something on Shabbos based on what the language model says. But people are building these systems, and we don't know how accurate they are. We don't know how much we can trust them, and people should be concerned about that. You definitely shouldn't just assume that because it's really good at answering some types of questions, that means you can trust it. It certainly doesn't mean that it can give psak halacha.
Rabbi Wittenstein, what do you see?
Let me
What
try to-
changes do you
So
see?
I think, I see someone's asking a question, and I think that's what Dr. Mannheim was just talking about. Will a computer be able to paskin? Well, the very basic problem is all the real questions are the ones where there's something slightly different. When it's, I mean, and it sounds a little crazy because, you would think that everything's been discussed, but everything has not been discussed. I was a couple of months ago in America. Now I was schmoozing with Rabbi Ari Center, who's one of the heads of the Chavkei, and he told me, yeah, no, we have, and they've been, and the Chavkei has been involved in kashrus for 40 to 50 years. Now, Rabbi Center is about my age, so let's say he's been involved for 20, 25 years. He's certainly aware of all the halachic, technicalities. And I said, so tell me, Rabbi Center, does new things really still come up? And he said, absolutely, because there's the one or two small differences. It can make a difference, and you have to be, as they say in learning, you have to be fully holding to the sugya, and that's a subtlety. That's a subtlety of thought that I don't think a computer can ever get to. Maybe I'm wrong, but I don't think so. And because of that, in terms of psak halacha, I don't. Someone wanted to know: are we going to say Ramesha said this, ChatGPT said that? No, I don't think so. I don't think that's a possibility.
Okay.
I mean, it could get into. Getting into deeper, as we could say, kilu machshava hashkafa of hara. That's another aspect to it, which I think all the panelists were sort of hinting to. The end of the day is you need a psak from a competent halachic authority, and to quote Rabbi Soloveitchik, one of the foundation of competency in halacha is your shemayim. And there's no way to talk about your shemayim by a computer. I don't care. Even if a computer gets to the point where no one can tell the difference, your shemayim is dependent on neshama.
Very nice.
So if I may interject a little bit, I think that Wittenstein is maybe hinting to it, but I would like to just make a point. It's not about the information. It really isn't. Even if you would theoretically be able to punch in the data and give it all of Bar-Ilan or Chochmah into this machine. That's not the point. The point isn't the information. And even if the Rav maybe gets it wrong, that's not the point. The point is it's a hora. And the hora is about the relationship between a person, the Torah, and Hashem. And when the Rav gives the psak, it's about your relationship to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And that is determined between the fact that the Rav has a right to have halachic standing, and that's given, and he's given the right to paskin. And now that becomes Kilu and Shemayim, that becomes the new status of what's going on in here. Is the pak treif or is it kasher? Yeah, it's not a discussion about the information. The information leads you to the outcome about your relationship to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And that cannot be determined by any amount of information, even if you would imagine in, say, 15, 25 years that ChatGPT could maybe, tell you all the psakas of all the Moshe and do all the, the fancy stuff. It wouldn't make a difference, because at the end of the day, just like in halacha, you have to have two egim. It doesn't matter if you know what happened. It doesn't matter if you have video cameras. If there are not two egim, there is nothing that happens. You need two egim as a kedushin. It doesn't matter that you had video cameras and you could see the ring on the finger and all the rest of it. If there were not two egim, there's no chalois in English discussion, and that's the point.
That's amazing.
So, I want to just flag. That was excellent, and I think hits a critical point. The other thing that should be pointed out is we don't understand these systems well enough to be sure that, in fact, when you ask it in various words whether you're allowed to have a cheeseburger, it will always say no. You can't actually make these systems reliable enough to even be sure that it will actually get the really basic answers definitely correct, which does not change the fact that it certainly doesn't change the fact that we can't rely on it for halacha, but should be an additional warning that we don't actually know whether we can rely on even the factual answers.
Well, a cheeseburger can be mutter if it's pekuach nefesh. You never know. So, like, every situation is different.
Well, before we end, I'd like to thank Rabbi Reuven Klein, who has initiated this evening, the Sofrim Torah list of scholars, and all our panelists. And I would like to give everyone another chance, a final rebuttal. I thank you again to Dr. Michael Samet, Dr. David Mannheim, Dr. Rabbi Baruch Clinton, Rabbi Arnie Wittenstein, and Rabbi Daniel Friedman. Before we wrap things up, and I'd like to open up questions.
Just read themselves.
So if anyone has any questions for our panelists at this point, you can unmute yourself and come right in. And I'll open up to our panelists. Does anyone have any final parting shots?
Where am
Well, I would say maybe if if I could it's not a zero-sum game, in that that, as you mentioned, as was mentioned already, that there are times when a cheeseburger could be mutter. There are of course you would never want to rely on a computer for really anything in a Torah sense normally, but then not all circumstances are normal. So the Ov V'Adoni is an Issa D'Oraisa and a Chiyuv Misa. If someone goes to the oracle and asks it a question, you're Chayiv Misa. But of course, as we know, Shaul went to his cousin, who was a Balas Ov, and asked her to bring the neshama of Shmuel back from the dead, and asked him questions. And as the Gemara tells us, the next day he ended up in Olam Haba, Machar Imi, right next to Shmuel. So as the Das Sofrim tells us, he had no choice. The Urim and Tumim weren't talking to him. The Nevi'im weren't talking to him, and he didn't know what to do. And Klal Yisrael was faced with a terrible crisis, a war, and he had to know what to do. So there are things that you would normally never consider doing, but under extreme circumstances, sometimes it's right. And so with AI, I don't think it's necessarily any different. We don't want to have to use it for certain purposes, but in unusual, extenuating circumstances, shalom bias issues, someone just starting out about. I had a shaila once. I used to ask the rabbi stuff on the internet many years ago. I got a shaila once from a Baal Tshuva on a nuclear submarine somewhere in the Pacific, I think. And he had a shaila which probably not many rabbis had ever heard before. So I dealt with it as best as I could, but that's called an extenuating circumstance if ever there was one. There's some things you can't do. The answer is going to be different from him than it would be for anyone else on earth. So AI, I think, also is that sliding scale.
Yeah, I want to make one parting shot. If there are any young people out there who are interested in this field, I think you should really look at what you can do in terms of some of these applications. A good case, there's an organization in Israel, it's all volunteer, called algo.co.il, which uses AI to try to make shidduchim. People should look into that and look at the methodology they use. So, for example, I didn't know that the Mir has somebody on the faculty.
Actually, could you come over here? I clicked something and I can't get out of it.
Huh?
I clicked this.
Dr. Samet, I think you can continue.
Yeah, Dr. Samet, continue, please.
You're muted right now. Sorry.
He's muted. You've muted Dr. Samet. Okay.
All right, you can hear me?
Yeah, you were saying that there's a shidduch application.
Yeah, which is pure AI. Instead of using shidduchim, they use models and algorithms to try to match up people. So as another example, I mean, this is what people, I would love to see such people take an interest in these kinds of applications. I didn't know we had somebody in the Mir, on the Mir faculty, Rabbi Wittenstein, who has expertise in AI. But one example, so many thousands of students in the Mir, one of their big problems is making chavrusas. And that's a great example where AI can be useful by asking certain questions to each student and then using an optimal kind of model that matches up people to be a suitable chavrusa.
I mean, isn't that what a computer? Isn't that a computer is based on zeros and ones? Isn't the basic code of a computer with zeros and ones? So really, what a computer does is bring mazavik zivugin.
Yeah, not bad. Very good.
Making chavrusas is like a small type of shidduch. Making real shidduch is much more complicated. That's lying at the depth.
So it doesn't matter how complicated it is. The process is important. Get the data and analyze it. That's it. The process.
So,
well, you have to when you're dealing with people. Human bechira is beyond calculation, and one of the contemporary-ish proofs to that was that the owner of the Twin Towers before 9/11 was only obligated to have insurance on one tower for the value of one tower. It was considered statistically impossible for both to fall. But human bechira, human free will could go beyond statistics. And famously the Gemara, I think it's a Gemara, it's certainly a midrash about a matranusa and saying it's not so hard to be mezavik zivugin. And she took 50 slave women and just put them together. And okay, so AI is going to do a somewhat of a better job, but the nuances of human personality, a lot of it is dependent on body language and connection of soul to an extent. So I don't believe that AI. I mean, it might be able to give you some ideas, but when a shidduch, some shidduchim are easy. To quote, I think it was Rav Mordechai Schwab from Muncie. To quote Rav Mordechai Schwab, 60% of yeshiva boys could blindly marry 60% of Beis Yaakov girls, and then there's the other 40%. So when the shidduch has more complications, then you need a good shadchan.
Yeah, but it's all based on data. Come on, it's all based on data and process. Listen, Eliezer used a mental model. It's the only story in the entire Torah that's told 3 times. He's got a mental model of what's going to happen. Then it actually happens, and then he tells it over to Lavan, right? 3 times, the mental model. You know how important mental models are in AI? They're critical, all right?
Mental models?
Mental models. Go ask a shotgun, what's a mental model? They don't even know.
Wasn't that the Rosh Yeshiva of Or Sameach? That was...
Who said that? Which one?
The Mendel model? The Mendel model.
Who is this comedian? Very good. Yeah, I know extremely very well Mendel Weinbach. My brother's the Mashkiach who was some man.
So is there a way for us to have questions?
Can I just,
go ahead.
There was a question in the chat by Moshe Nachfolger. Is there any indication of AI being looked at or hoped to be by some groups as a sort of Avodah Zarah, which will provide the answers to everything? And I think that the obvious answer to this is there are lots of idiots in the world, and there will certainly be some groups of people who decide that these systems can answer questions for them even when they can't, that they can rely on them even when they shouldn't. That I'm sure somebody somewhere will decide that they should start bowing down to ChatGPT for whatever reason. The question is, what is it that humans do when they think about these systems that leads them to be confused. And I think humans very fundamentally want to think of the things around them as having feelings, as being real in a certain sense. People develop relationships. They'll swear that their dog really understands them. It doesn't. But you know,
dogs understand a significant amount of human body language, quite
that's true.
quantified.
That's true. But the point is, people will imagine that computers or animals or other things, that they have a relationship with them that doesn't exist. People are good at doing that even when they shouldn't. You know, I think that's a fundamental issue. It's the, you know, on some level, it's the reason why we had problems with Avodah Zarah originally, right? People wanted to attribute powers to things incorrectly. But I think that's less about AI and more about people who fool themselves.
No, I mean, just very briefly, it's a really, in my personal opinion, and I'm basing this on the Ramban, Ramchal. The Ramban is in the Aseret Dibros and in about 8 other places in Chumash. Avodah Zarah is not just superstition and believing things which can't be true. It's a system of manipulating the ultimate cause. In other words, the ultimate cause of anything in our world. We live in a physical world, but ultimate causes in the spiritual world. Avodah Zarah is a way, is a methodology to attempt, and I repeat, to attempt to manipulate that. What level efficiency practitioners of Avodah Zarah had, that's a hard and difficult question for us to answer. So it's the comparison to Avodah of AI to Avodah Zarah, I frankly think is weak. I mean, it's sort of like I once heard someone compare the Urim V'Tumim to a tablet, which is flashing answers. They're both flashing answers. Great, but there's no connection at all. You know, the Urim V'Tumim, to quote the Ramban, it's a level of Ruach HaKodesh, quotes, above Basko, but below pure Nevuah. So I sent a message out to the chat, to the group chat. Whoever wants to really understand Avodah Zarah needs to check out my podcast, Jewish History Uncensored, episode 102, where I clearly explain this with a lot more detail and, you know, examples, etc.
The bottom of your screens, there should be a little button called reactions. I'm speaking to the entire HAL. In the bottom of my screen, it's in the middle, right over here. And you can click there and there's something to raise your hand. If somebody wants to ask questions, we have a lot of people online and I would mute everyone. It might be chaotic. So if anybody wants to click on the little reaction and raise their hands before we, one is raising their hand, Klein is raising his hand. And we're unmuting you. Yes, it's Klein.
Hi.
Go ahead.
Question. So essentially people have been discussing how AI is so new, is so different, might take over the world, might kill us all. Do we have to be scared? Fundamentally new and different and unprecedented. Am I missing something? Because this just seems like Google 2.0 to me. You kind of, you know, it'll just, instead of me sitting there going through all the results and reading it, it'll do it for me. It doesn't seem so life-alteringly fundamentally different. It's a useful.
The question is, what is very different about this than which this was a question that was asked in the very beginning. How is this different than my calculator when I was 10 years old? And the short answer of that was.
So I think there are 2 pieces. One is, people have said, a nuclear bomb is an improved firecracker. It is, but when something gets enough better, it does in fact change. I'm not saying that AI is a nuclear weapon, but I think we have seen a very significant pace of change. The capabilities are very, very quickly advancing. There's real concern that, for instance, artists will be put out of jobs, that writers will have a much harder time getting jobs because of the current systems. There are a lot of things that are changing very rapidly. That doesn't mean that these systems are fundamentally new. We've certainly had technologies that put people out of work before. It used to be that 90-something% of people worked on farms, and now we have tractors. But we are seeing that these systems are very capable and that they're developing very rapidly. And I think that we should expect to see things, continue to change because of them.
I might add also that, if I could just quickly, that the ChatGPT or specifically the Auto GPT that I was using shows that GPT can actually not be a pull technology, but a push technology. Google, if I want to search for something, I'm pulling information from Google's servers, which are very much controlled. But with GPT, in theory, I can push my programs out to the world, and it'll actually interact and affect the real world. And we don't know where that'll end. Once you associate a tool with programmability, that somebody can write a script and the script will just head out and keep doing it until it stops, and it may not stop. We don't know exactly what the limits of what GPT can do once it's out on the internet. So it's a little bit scary, but also very exciting. And definitely different from Google.
Okay, David Hoja.
Hi,
Good
how are you?
question.
So I
David
just wanted
Hoja.
to, hi, how are you? So I just wanted to comment on a couple of things. So I'm not an expert on artificial intelligence, but my understanding is that it is it's not anything like Google. But first of all, that I saw that that actually Google company did a very interesting experiment with with robots. They controlled what the robots would be taught. In other words, they controlled all the input to the robots. And what they did is they put the robots on whatever, a soccer field, and told them they have to score, that their job is to score. And so the robots eventually, on their own, apparently, learned strategy, learned what was the most effective way to score. For instance, when there was a ball, that they realized, instead of all converging on the ball at the same time to try to get the ball into the goal, that it's better for them to strategize and to spread out, and that would be more effective. So that was something that they were never taught. So that's a difference between artificial intelligence, and artificial intelligence actually does teach itself. And plus, it teaches itself in a much more powerful way. Again, I'm not an expert on this, but the experts can correct me if I'm wrong. But one of the reasons it's so powerful is because the way I understood, like, for example, that let's say there are 1,000 of us sitting in a room. We're all smart people, let's say. We're all very smart people, and we all have particular areas of expertise. So let's say whatever it is, let's say I learned physics, right? I learned some advanced concepts in physics. So if I wanted to teach the other people who have no background in physics, but their background is in something else, their background is in biology, their background is in music, composition, it would take a long time. And similarly, the person whose expertise that they developed over many years in music composition, it would take them a long time to teach that to me. But what happens is because instead you have those 1,000 units essentially all knowing the same thing. As soon as one learns something, 1,000 of them learn something. So basically, each of them knows what all 999 other ones know. So they then use that. Again, the experts can correct me. My understanding is they can then use that incredible amount of information, which is available to no one and is available to no computer, and then they could make connections that otherwise would not be made. And that's my understanding. Please correct me. And so that.
Okay. Okay, so if there are no other questions from the audience, no hands raised. Oh, I see Rabbi Schneier Burton. Sofrim fame, and it's going to ask, can we unmute Rabbi Schneur Burton? Hello, Rabbi Schneur Burton.
Hi, everyone. I came in a little late, so I'm not sure if this is something that was brought up earlier. But I have something that I think about, and maybe it's going to sound radical. I'm curious if this is something that anyone's thinking about. Someone mentioned something about AI not having Yira Shamayim. So I'm not going to comment on how people understand Yira Shamayim specifically. But my question is, as Ma'aminim, who believe in fundamental truths that we can call, say, religious truths or Torah truths, is there potential for teaching those truths, which we consider to be the most fundamental to all of reality and all of the ultimate success of humanity? Is there potential for teaching those to AI? And is anyone thinking about that? Can that be done? And are there projects? I know Dr. Samet mentioned some projects that seem to be dealing with more practical or immediate goals, such as shidduchim. But what about these kinds of really universe-changing ideas? Can we put those out there? Is this an opportunity to put Torah ideas out there in the world in a way that they were never put out, on a scale they were never put out? Is that something that is possible to think about? And is anyone thinking about that?
Yeah, I would answer it's definitely possible to do that. You're saying, could you teach a system about Yirah Shamayim, for example?
Mitzias Hashem, the basic fundamental ideas of the Torah, which we have to obviously define in a way that a computer could understand. You know, maybe Yirah Shamayim is the wrong word.
Of course, if you had the right models, yes, you could train any of these computer systems in a whole variety of ways.
I will very deeply disagree.
Okay,
Your
not-
Shemaim is
think-
lying at the core
no, but
of
he's talking about understanding. You're not talking about in terms of the action, doing mitzvahs or doing averos,
So-
are you?
No,
Huh?
I'm talking about what's fundamental, what's important, what the
Of
nature of
course.
reality is, and what people should be doing with the universe.
Yeah, of course. How can you disagree with that? Of course. That's
Because
the
I didn't
whole
notice
goal.
people.
I mean,
Sorry.
The goal is to
You know-
optimize behavior.
well,
You can teach these systems, meaning you can provide them the input, and they can learn to say things about whatever topic you'd like them to. But I think right now, if you were to ask one of these models, can you solve a physics problem? It can do that. And if you ask it, can you explain the rules of Quidditch and Harry Potter? It can do that. And it doesn't know the difference between those two. It doesn't know that one of them is imaginary and one of them is real. It doesn't have an understanding of what it is that's happening. If you teach an AI system these things, these facts, it will absolutely be able to use the phrases that make it look like it understands. That's, I think, indisputable. The problem is that doesn't reflect something about its understanding. It reflects something about its ability to spit back text.
David Hoja.
Okay.
I just wanted to I'm sorry, I didn't have a chance to I didn't get an answer to my question. I didn't have a chance to continue it. I just wanted to make another point. So I can give an example. Again, I don't know, I missed part of it here, but I think a lot of the focus has been about the scary stuff. It seems to me there's a lot of really good stuff, and I'll just give an example. So let's say, without being too specific about anyone or anything, let's say there was a complex question having to do with both halacha and technology. And one sees that very often people who are offering opinions about the technology might know a lot about Gemaras and things like that, but clearly don't understand the Metzias at hand. And they misunderstand the Metzias, and then the psak that they come out with is embarrassing to anybody who does understand the Metzias. Same token, you have people who do understand the Metzias and understand a little bit of Torah and think that because they understand a little bit of Torah, that they can paskin for the entire world. So in theory, again, in terms of continuing what I was saying before, it would appear to me that one of the great things that could potential for AI in Torah is to be able to have an intelligence that synthesizes that knowledge, great knowledge of Torah, and great knowledge and great understanding of the underlying technology, and perhaps also great understanding of the social aspect, the social consequences, because that's another aspect in Psak Halacha, which sometimes is not considered, the social aspects of and the social consequences of posting a certain way. And so, not that this would be our final psak and that we're korban mishtachavim, but it would be a tremendous starting point and perhaps a superior starting point to a lot of what we have right now. So I would say that it's extremely advantageous that basically, again, not that we take it that just because AI said it, that we're korban mishtachavim, but on the other hand, we treat it, we look at it, and we look at anything. We look at it critically, and we could see that it teaches us something that we might otherwise not know.
Okay, thank you. Well, I'd like to call this meeting to an end. And I'll, if I may, thank all our panelists, and if I thank my wife for being the technician for this evening. And let me just end, if I may, with a pasuk in Bereshit that says that Hashem said about Avraham Avinu, Yadati l'man asher yitzava es banav es beiso acharav. Hashem said he knows Avraham Avinu. Rashi says Yadati was lashon chiba. That some knowledge is connection, deya and connection and chiba. And Be'ezer Hashem should help us that we should use our deya to connect to Hashem, and that the technology should be a vehicle to connect us more to ourselves and others, our other Jews, and to Hashem. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you for arranging this.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rabbi Klein, and all the other participants, and of course, the host, Rabbi Subar.